All right, we're back. We're heading into round 7 of our event, and I believe we have current standings ready to look at.
Yeah.
Or we're
Thanks
going
for
to
staying
here
with
we
us,
are.
everybody.
Okay, so we have Mike Hall and Owen Turcott, who we've seen both of them today. They are our undefeated players. They took a draw last round. We expect are taking a draw again this round to draw into top 8. The other players who are ahead of the field are Caleb Yetman, Mike Picklow, Devin O'Donnell, who we've not seen today, Travis Williams, Brendan Ross, and Ben Jones. These 8 players are a match clear of the field. That means that these players, if they so choose, are able to intentionally draw into the top 8. So if that is what happens, then we will show you a match of players just playing for standing and the glory of a 5-2 finish. But it is possible we do not have any matches of players playing for top 8. So while the players sort out whether or not they're going to draw, and apparently I'm receiving word that one of the matches might actually not be drawing. Maybe the players are playing for seeding or pride of place on top of the standings, whatever it may be. While this gets sorted out, Justin, now draws are a subject in Magic that certainly draw some complaint from people, especially over the last year, because paper Magic, I personally feel like there's no alternative. You cannot disallow draws in paper Magic, because if you allow unintentional draws, which we basically have to do, then you have to allow intentional draws also. Otherwise, you just open yourself up to collusion.
Right. And I mean, even if you're, you're right completely. And if I was going to play devil's advocate and say that, maybe we don't have the intentional draws, right? And you look at what that does to a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
If, players are forced to play, and we'll say that, in this scenario, there aren't slow play warnings. Nothing's going on. No one's watching their tournament, but they have to play.
Mm-hmm.
They just play for 50 minutes. Don't kill each other, and then you're holding up the tournament. So it's one thing that makes it easy, for the tournament organizer to kind of like get through the rounds as well at the end of the tournament. And yeah, I mean, it is something that's controversial, but
well, we're gonna talk more about this. We have some thoughts about this. We're gonna discuss because in online Magic, it is an option. You can disallow draws in online Magic if you want to.
Right.
We're going to talk more about that at the end of the round, but the round looks like it's ready to go. So we're going to table that discussion for the moment and look at our deck lists for our round 7 players.
Perfect.
So we have Mickey Siegel playing Devoted Devastation. So this is another green-white combo deck, not using Heliod, using Devoted Druid combined with the Vizier of Remedies to make infinite green mana, to then do whatever you please with, whether you have Ballista that you tutored for, whether you have a Shalai on the board to pump your board as many times as you want. There's a couple of ways that can happen. So that's what we're looking at here. And then the Devastation part of the name, if you're not familiar with it, is a black freezing card that can get a creature from the graveyard with haste if the Devoted Druid dies.
So that's actually Postmortem Lunge. I was incorrect when we were off there talking about this.
You screwed me again.
I know. Devastation, actually, finale of Devastation.
Okay.
So, number 1, an X tutor spell. So sorcery speed can, for green, and X, tutor out of your graveyard or library a creature. I think actually from hand as well. It's just a really good tutor. But you can get a card with mana cost X or less. And then if you pay the requisite mana, so the required amount in this case is 12. If X is 10 or more, you actually pump your creatures and give them all trample until end of turn. So it works, getting the Devoted Druid into play, and also once you have infinite mana, making all of your creatures huge and attacking.
I feel like a complete fool for believing you on the card names there. But yes, Justin is correct on what those cards do and how they work. So then we have the Blue-White Spirits deck, Wallace, Costa. And we have similar to what we just saw, but we dropped a color. We do still have a Changeling with Unsettled Mariner as opposed to Realmwalker. And we still have Ether Vials. We have no companies, but we have more creatures. and a few other things that we didn't have before, like Shacklegeist. Yeah, that's basically the difference here, and we're ready to go. So,
because we're not playing the nobles, we have more 2-drops.
Right. So round 7, kicking it off. And for Mickey Siegel and the Devoted Devastation deck, this is a hand with most of
Our
what
combo.
you need. Yeah.
We have the Devoted Druid and an Eldritch Evolution to get the Vizier. We also have protection, right, in the Giver of Runes.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is part of what makes this deck. I remember playing this deck quite a number of times and playing with it a little bit. Yeah, Giver of Runes definitely makes this harder to manage because this is a deck that can get going fairly quickly. And if they have a spare mana, which they often do, because the curve is Devoted Druid on 2 and then tutor or just have Vizier on turn 3. So if you want to throw out Giver of Runes on turn 1, this becomes kind of hard to manage. Birds of Paradise, though, is the choice here. The Devoted Druid and the Giver can be played on turn 2. Also, this is probably impacted by open deck lists, and Mickey is aware of the fact that Devoted Druid cannot be bolted or pathed on turn 2.
Right.
As we can see him checking right now over his opponent's list.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you want the bird in play on turn 1 in almost every scenario, just because you want to try to get to a big mana turn with the Eldritch Evolution.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to disagree with you there. If we're playing against any deck with removal, I'm playing the Giver first because
you want to play turn 2 Devoted Druid and have it survive. Yeah.
Yeah. And okay, so what you're saying is you could play the bird and then you could lead on. Because any development where we're not playing Druid on turn 2 seems like we're just kind of hiccuping for no reason. But except in a matchup where there's no threat to the Druid, this makes perfect sense, and that is certainly the scenario here.
So we have a draw in the Canopy.
Ooh, yeah.
And we're actually short on white sources.
Oh,
so that's not going to do it this turn.
No, I don't think we are, because Devoted Druid can tap for 2 mana.
Green white.
So we can go.
And then but then we have Evolution for nothing that can pay us off.
No. Okay. All right. I might. If we go Druid for 2 mana and then one of the other sources for Evolution, get Vizier, then we have the bird left over, or we have to float mana from the bird, and then cast the call, and I think we're home free. Maybe I'm missing something, but that was.
No, you're right. You need to. We would just had to make.
Oh, okay. You know what? This works also. This just casting the Vizier, and then we'll use the Evolution for the win condition.
Can we make infinite mana and make Shalai?
Yeah. This works exactly as well. In fact, this is arguably better because this way we're not playing the Evolution until we have the combo on the board. So if our opponent, like, the Evolution has a drawback if we get it countered. So this is in some ways safer because we're casting this last. If they had a counter, they're going to counter the Vizier. I don't think there is any counter that could have for 2 mana, but I'm just throwing it out there in general. But yeah, this is done, and it was done either way. So we're getting Ranger Captain into
or the
Ballista, and we're all set. Done. So Mickey takes down game 1. So yeah, this is a case where the line that I was laying out was effectively equivalent, but I think Mickey's was actually a little bit better because it was somewhat safer.
Sure.
So good on him, and he takes down game 1. Let's see if there's any help on the sideboards, and yeah, that was a well played game. Wallace Costa, Blue-White Spirits. Do you have any help? What we're looking for is targeted removal, which you have none of main deck, counters, which you have very little of main deck, and what do we have here? We have Path to Exile. That sounds like a winner.
And Force of Negation is actually better. So funny enough, we kind of hedge our bets here. we see the deicide in the sideboard for specifically green-white Heliod, which we're kind of juking with the Devoted Devastation deck. But then we're also a little bit more reliant on the Eldritch Evolution and Finale and Eldamri's Call. So the Force of Negations are better. So you have one card that, obviously is a blank and is worse. But then, the Force of Negations end up just being better in the deck for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. The Rest in Peace stops the Postmortem Lunge. I don't think you bother with that because there's not too many ways that the Devoter would get in the graveyard in the first place.
Right. If you're removing it from play, it's going to be with the Path to Exile.
Yeah.
Or the Skyclave Apparition. So, and that's actually something that we didn't speak on. We said we had no removal main deck, but we do have the Skyclave Apparitions.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, and
funny enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, funny enough, we only had two lands in play at the end of the game there. But there are scenarios where you're actually able to take more than 2 turns against this deck.
Yeah. So Mickey had a not great but capable hand on his 7 here, but without access to.
Well, it looks like actually on his 6, right?
Oh,
now we're on 5.
Oh, you are right. You're right. Okay. But anyway, I was going to say, but we did not have access to Devoted Druid, and really that's what we're looking for in the deck. So mulligan away, and we find it, and we actually have a excellent 5.
Yeah, the Giver to protect the Druid on turn 1 for a turn 2 Druid. And then we have the Eladamri's Call for Vizier.
All right, we pick up an extra land drop, I guess. Unless Wallace has 2 paths, or I guess a path and a Skyclave Apparition, that first path doesn't really do a whole lot. So here comes. Okay, so Druid actually, I'm remembering more about how this deck plays out now, can get in the graveyard against a path because it can kill itself.
Yeah.
So that actually can happen. So maybe the Post-Lord Lunges stayed in, but I still would think they probably didn't. And
so it depends on what we draw. We are going to have a land drop next turn, so we can use the Canopy with the infinite green mana to get another draw. But we'll have to see if we're dead here. Oh. And get it off the top.
Goodness. So I was actually going to question whether we even want to bother tutoring right away, because we could try and draw either a Vizier or a win condition and then tutor for the other one. And forcing Mickey to do it preemptively would reduce his chances of winning. But okay, there we go. And I mean, this is a highly tutorable deck. There are a variety of win conditions, and so Mickey drawing the perfect card right there. I mean, yes, it happened, and it was probably his ideal draw. But I don't want to take away from the fact that there were a number of ideal draws, equivalent draws to that there, even if that was the best one.
Right. Yeah, funny enough, the emergence of this kind of green-white Heliod deck kind of coming into popularity makes a deck that's similar, but a little bit more glass cannon, better in some scenarios, right? Like, we could say that Spirits might be a little bit more equipped to deal with the Heliod deck because you have more turns to set up. Yeah. But when this deck is actually killing you on turn 3, you have, we had the opportunity to path a creature. We did. And then we died.
Yeah. That was a path against a mold of 5. Right. And Mickey won on turn 4 or 3? 3, I think. Because the path.
Yeah. It was his turn 3.
It was pathed. He molded 5, got pathed, exiled, and then won on turn 3. That's pretty insane. That's something that, like you're saying, that the green white Heliod deck, I don't know that they could churn out a draw quite like that.
Yeah, especially not on the mold 5.
Yeah, I mean, that was
they don't get to use their mana as efficiently as in the Devoted deck, because in Devoted Druid the spells cost 2 mana, and you make infinite green. In Heliod, you're assembling maybe a stronger combo or a more resilient combo because one of your pieces is indestructible.
Mm-hmm.
But it costs 6 mana in total as opposed to 4.
Yeah. So Mickey styles all over us in that game and picks up win number 5. But well, okay, I was gonna say is gonna come up short for top 8, but if the word we got was that one of the matches chose to actually play, then Mickey would potentially be in the running for a slot. After all, anyway, that is round 7. I don't know if we have a backup match, but we do have another match in the Madness bracket. So let's go ahead and take a look at that.
Yeah.
While we wait to find out what else is going to happen this round. So we have our last quarterfinal match in this bracket number 2. Again, if you want to see the deck lists, it's !madness in the chat. But we have Second Breakfast or Eggs versus Amulet Combo. These are 2 decks that Second Breakfast is probably one of the, out of the whole field, might be the deck that people liked playing.
The most infuriating.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and take a look at that one.
Yeah, for those of you unfamiliar with Second Breakfast or Second Sunrise or Eggs, this is the deck that is notorious for being on camera in a GP in San Diego, where the quarterfinals match is being played, Eggs versus Brian Kibler. And Brian Kibler actually wrote on a piece of paper F6 and walked away from the match because Eggs was a deck that took a very long time while it was comboing to execute its combo. Mm-hmm. You have to draw your whole deck and then demonstrate a loop after the fact. And people were infuriated with its speed. It did kill you quickly, but not through player action, right? So the fact that you had to kind of churn through your deck, it was very, very annoying to just watch your opponent do that for, maybe 10 minutes to kill you.
Yeah, I enjoyed playing this deck on Magic Online because I like combo decks that like build upon themselves as they go, which this one most definitely does.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a graveyard based deck that just builds up advantage, and then eventually you draw your whole deck and you just recur your Pirate Spellbomb over and over again to kill the opponent and whatever they might have.
So the loop demonstrated with Conjurer's Bauble, Elsewhere Flask and First Second Sunrise. So you're getting back all of your artifacts and particularly Lotus Blooms, netting mana each iteration that you're going through this loop. You make infinite red mana, and then you can now cycle the Pyrite Spellbomb in the same manner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's just endless, and it can do however much damage you want. You can also Ghost Quarter yourself along the way to put more lands into your graveyard from play, which then come back into play. And
right with the Second Sunrise.
Even further, yeah, this deck is a monster. All right, we have opposing Second Breakfast. We have another completely unreasonable deck, Summer Bloom Amulet Titan deck, and this was eventually shut down because there was really no question that one of the enablers had to go.
Right. Was it going to be Summer Bloom or was it going to be Amulet of Vigor? Right. And they chose in this instant to not destroy the deck, which I definitely agree with. We still have versions of Amulet that exist, and I think that they're better for the format. You want to have a deck in a format if you can have it exist, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
So having this less powered version that we actually saw on camera today lose makes it a little bit more enjoyable, I think. You're not just completely annihilating somebody's entire modern deck, you're just significantly neutering it. We see 2 cards banned, actually. Simian Spirit Guide was not involved in the Amulet Bloom kind of massacre that Amulet put on the format, but it was banned sometime after due to its power level.
Yeah, and this is, we saw another. So this is kind of this is not really related to the deck, but a story from someone playing the deck. I remember there was a disqualification and banning from this.
Sure, with a palming, right?
Right, because there was a player who had been playing this deck, and the one Simian Spirit Guide in the deck, really, if you can go Spirit Guide into Amulet, play a tap and a Karoo to make 2 mana and bounce it, and then Summer Bloom, you could actually play a Titan on turn 1. This deck could conceivably win on turn 1 if you have Spirit Guide into Amulet.
Yep.
And there was a player at the Pro Tour who was palming his opening hand. So because then that was you only need 1 Spirit Guide if
it's always in your opener.
It's always in your opener. And that player was caught and thrown out of the event. So that shouldn't take away from the glory of the brilliance of this deck, though. But it was an amusing story at the time. But yeah, this deck was an absolute powerhouse. And then the Hive Mind kill, if you do manage to kill all the Primeval Titans, it's just Hive Mind and then Pact. And if you're not playing green or blue, then you're just dead, or black. Yeah. So that was
the sad irony of the deck is, like, I actually was more infuriated with Hive Mind kills because it felt like you could not do anything.
Right. Yeah, I know the Hive Mind was super frustrating. I lost the Legacy Open Finals against Hive Mind, and it was just a pure Hive Mind deck, and it was just
So I think, you know, in pure spirit of the bracket, we do have to pick a winner there.
Sure.
I think that Amulet Bloom, one of the most explosive decks certainly that we ever saw in Modern, and that's going to be my winner for the round. What about
I agree.
You?
I in that matchup, I would also take Amulet. I think the second breakfast deck was strong and also annoying, but I don't think it was generally as fast as the Amulet combo deck could expect to be. I think that I would choose Amulet also.
Yeah, if we're going to finish out our bracket and, like, you know, go into the quarters and finals.
Sure, we'll go through it quickly. Okay, so we had did we pick I don't know if we picked a winner for the first one, did we? Or did we pick...
No, I think that I like Lantern Control more, but I think that we just picked Splinter Twin as you know, it was the ubiquitous kind of plague of the format that people complain about.
We'll do this correctly since I messed it up the last time. The brackets go horizontally. So we have Splinter Twin versus Infect.
Okay. I'm going to pick Splinter Twin as the winner there because of Lightning Bolt and Electrolyze.
Sure. Okay. And then we have, I believe we picked Treasure Cruise Delver.
Sure. Over Amulet.
Versus Amulet combo and, over Player Pod. And then, so Treasure Cruise Delver versus Amulet combo.
I'm going to go with Amulet.
I think, yeah, I am too. I think I'm going with Amulet. I just think, like, your disruption, your bolts and such don't matter, and Amulet is just gonna crush. That's what I would expect to happen. So that would leave Splinter Twin versus Amulet in the finals of this bracket.
Yep, and I actually played a lot of Modern, you know, at the Prevalence. Both of these cards, they were actually banned right around the same time, Summer Bloom and Splinter Twin. And I think that it was pretty close. You know, it came down a lot of times to specifically Hive Mind, specifically Remand versus Summer Bloom being on the draw, and also Blood Moon. Amulet combo, you know, in its previous iterations could not really beat a Blood Moon that Splinter Twin kind of adopted as its, like, sideboard plan for a lot of decks. But I think the most explosive deck that we have in this, you know, eight deck list is going to be the Amulet combo deck.
I agree. Yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, the another interaction I think was cool was the ability to, like, Pestermite to tap down a Primeval Titan that had haste.
Yeah,
that's neat, and then win the next turn. But yeah, I think I would just be on the Amulet side the whole way through.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just one of the most monstrous decks the format's ever seen. So that concludes the Modern Madness bracket number 2. We also concluded the Swiss for our 7 rounds. We'll be back a little later on to finish out, to play on the top 8. But before that, we started the conversation at the beginning of this round, and then kind of
about the potential for our unintentional draw, right?
Right, and we got cut off by the match actually having to be played, but which is really what we're here for. But just to finish that off, because we kind of left it hanging. So I think we agree that in paper, there's no way to eliminate intentional draws. I think that's a good thing. I think they should be there. Online, I think you obviously can do it because time issue is different, because instead of having the players plural run out of time, a player runs out of clock. Right. So you can get rid of unintentional draws online, which means you can get rid of intentional draws.
Right.
So the question is, should you? And this has been a topic of conversation at several points in the last year. Draws are currently legal in Nerd Rage events, but that question is still kind of up for debate, and it may not always be that way. But Justin and I were both aware of something that happened in the chess world last week. We actually talked about it during the break. In that, well, Justin, you want to go through it real quick, or?
Yeah. So, kind of in the same vein, there aren't allowed intentional draws in the chess tournament setting, and there are some lines that would constitute a draw out of both players, specifically repeating moves for 3 repetitions in a row, which happens a lot, in just king pawn endings specifically, or king endings. But we saw a pretty crazy one at the first couple turns of a game, right, Joe?
Yeah, no, it was Magnus Carlsen against Hikaru Nakamura, Magnus Carlsen, the top player in the world, Hikaru, probably top 10.
Sure, and a lot of people that are on Twitch probably know Hikaru because he streams on Twitch.
Yeah, and the 2 players playing effectively in the last round of a day 1, where the outcome didn't matter because they both already guaranteed advancement, played out a 3-fold repetition right off the start, which led to a draw.
Right.
And because the match didn't matter to them. And some of the chess world kind of reacted. Now, I'm not a huge chess guy, but I do watch the Agad Mator channel and see, his games, and he talked about it. And he was kind of outraged. He's like, how could they do this?
Right. And a lot of chess purists, kind of hold on to this kind of nostalgia for the tournament setting and like the prestige of chess.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's funny how in Magic we are we're kind of shaky on unintentional draws, but we're okay with intentional draws. In chess, they have unintentional draws with 3-fold repetition, or you play through a game and then you get kind of neither player can win, so they agree to a draw, right. But they play the game and then have a draw. They're okay with that. That happens actually all the time. But drawing before playing the match is just not even something they consider. So We're kind of at opposite sides of the spectrum in Magic versus chess in that regard, which I think is kind of just ironic, even though it's not really indicative of anything. But yeah, as far as going forward, I don't know. At Nerd Rage, the issue is not all time settled. Like, it's still up for debate. If you have thoughts on this in the chat, go ahead and put them in there. We do look at the chat after the events sometimes. And I certainly will check right now as to what people have to say as far as should online Magic events allow draws. My personal belief is that it should. If you're a match ahead of the field, you've earned the right to advance to the top 8 without having to play your last round. Not everyone agrees with that.
And I mean, it's a benefit, and also you have these 15, 16 round tournaments where one match, deciding your life into the top 8, or for playing for a trophy. You're right. I think that, starting a tournament 14-1 or, 13-0, you should be provided some additional resource because of that fact.
Yeah, and I think it's not. I don't think we're not giving them anything extra. We're just allowing them to purposely, if both players have no
capitalize on their position
by winning, then no reason to make them play. That's the way I feel. Maybe you feel that way. Not everyone does. It's an ongoing topic. It may not be decided. Anyway, our Swiss rounds are decided. We're gonna have to say goodbye to Justin. Thanks for being here, dude. This was your first time. I think you did good. I was happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we'll be back for a little bit with top 8. Will Kruger will be joining me for the top 8, just like he did last month. So stick around. We'll be back it'll be a little bit of a turnaround to get the top 8 ready to go, but we'll be back shortly.